This is Cassie.
And this is Anna.
And you're listening to
Now Showing.
So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about the Ozarks on Netflix.
As well as some honorable mentions of things that you should see this month, as well as things coming up next month for October on Netflix and in theaters.
So, you are the It's expert. I just saw this movie because I was told I had to by my friends. So, if you want to get into kind of the original one, which I've never seen before.
Well, of course, it is based on a Stephen King novel, originally written in 1986. It just happened to be his 22nd novel. The original was a 2-part miniseries that aired on TV in 1990 and was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. He also directed Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and Fright Night 2, as well as doing a ton of work with John Carpenter on The Thing and Dark Star and a lot of his beginning work. The original starred Tim Curry as Pennywise. Of course, everyone loves.
Love Tim Curry forever.
No one will ever forget Tim Curry.
I'll never forget. He was Frankenfurter. I'm never going to forget him.
From Frankenfurter to Pennywise. The original takes place in the 1950s, and then in the 80s when they are adults. However, compared to the new one, the children grew up in the 80s, and the sequel will take place in the early 2000s as them as adults. So it's kind of fun to see that they're making it to fit the times, which is something a lot of movies aren't doing. The miniseries actually attracted 30 million viewers in its premiere, and it was premiered as a television miniseries, so that meant there was less gore compared to the novel and the remake. It was a lot softer for family viewing audiences.
Why have I never seen that one?
It is definitely interesting. And right now, the 1990s version sits at a 57 on Rotten Tomatoes. Although the first one gets a lot of critiques, it was good. I mean, a lot of people loved it, mostly for Tim Curry. The fact that it was a Stephen King novel. It was such a big novel. I mean, this novel's over 1,000 pages, and they fit it into a 2-part miniseries. And there's so much stuff in the novel that they barely fit it into the first one. And that's what's so great about the remake, is that the remake does fit it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to accommodate that, and that's why they're making it a 2-part series, but they're putting it as an R rating so that they can closely adapt it to the novel, almost as a tribute to Stephen King's work. Even if some of it isn't completely frightening, it's still, in its own way, a beautiful movie.
Yeah. I thought even when it wasn't scary that it was really good.
Yeah,
I don't like scary movies. I don't like them.
Yeah, it was funny at times when it needed to be.
Those kids were hilarious. They
Yeah.
were so funny. The kid from Stranger Things, Finn
Finn Wolfhard.
Finn Wolfhard is literally the funniest kid ever.
And even though he's not the main character.
No, he's just...
I mean, there's 7 kids,
yeah,
but
he's just a
Billy is
brilliant supporting character.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
That Georgie kid was so cute. I can't talk about it or I'll cry.
It's so sad. It's so sad. And compared from, and we should mention this now, spoiler alerts. We're going to go into a lot of details about the movies. In the beginning of the original one, you see Georgie as he is coaxed into, what is that? A drain? A storm drain? Is that what the technical name for it is?
It's not a technical sewer.
Yeah.
It's a storm drain.
Yeah.
That just leads to the sewers, I'm pretty sure.
And he's coaxed by Tim Curry Pennywise into the storm drain, and that's really all you see of it. Wow. I mean, I think he screams, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It's been so long since I've seen the original.
Well, this one is not as soft.
Yeah, it is definitely not as soft.
Definitely gets his arm eaten off.
Yeah, he blatantly gets his arm bitten off by Pennywise, and as he turns and the poor little guy is like trying to get away, you see him like grabbing the ground with his hand and trying to flee away with his little bleeding nub. as behind
so
him,
sad.
Pennywise's arms are like stretching out to drag him into the drain. And the most heartbreaking part of it is he's yelling for Billy as he's being pulled into the drain. And it literally brought a tear to my eye because I knew it was coming, but it was so
I didn't know it.
traumatic.
I had no idea what I was getting into. So I get in there, and this little adorable child is out playing in the rain. And I was like, that's your first mistake, kid.
Yeah.
The second mistake like,
was a slippery boat.
Yeah. The boat was too slippery. It was very obviously too fast for you.
Thanks,
and then
Billy.
He runs into that freaking...
oh, my God. You're like, no.
Like, the roadblock
construction
thing.
roadblock thing, yeah.
I was like, really? 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 And then he freaking dies or whatever. I was traumatized.
Or whatever.
I didn't deserve that.
And one of the best things about the remake is that the kids didn't see Pennywise until they saw him for the first time in their scenes. So Georgie didn't have any idea what this thing looked like until he saw him for the first time pop up in that sewer. So the fright on this poor kid's face is completely real. This clown that's just like, boop, right there in the sewer.
Hiya, Georgie.
I didn't realize this, but I was reading on IMDb last night, and I'm going to have to go watch the movie again just to see what I missed, but apparently Pennywise's eyes turn blue, and in the book, they do that because it's supposed to resemble Georgie and Billy's mom's eyes. And that's why Pennywise's eyes are blue in the beginning, because he's trying to find that, like, comfort to coax him in. And that's such a small detail that you would have never paid attention to.
No, I wouldn't have picked up on that one.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's Pennywise, or Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise in the remake. He actually does most of the creepy things with his eyes all by himself.
He is so weird.
I know. It's one of my favorite parts, though, because I found that out the day the day of seeing the movie. I found it out earlier that morning that they use CGI on some of it because some of it's just, you could not do that with your eyes.
Unrealistic human behavior. Like, he's a paranormal clown.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
that wasn't gonna happen.
There's parts where you see his one eye's off to the side and the other eye's like down in the opposite corner of his face. And Bill Skarsgård is doing that all on his own. And director Andy Muschietti was like, hey, we're going to do this with CGI, but are there some scenes, do you think that you could do this with your eyes? I know it's kind of ridiculous. And Bill Skarsgård looked at him while doing the creepy thing with his eyes, and he's like, oh, do you mean like this? And for most of the movie, did the crazy things with his eyes all on his own, and that's in itself why he's just perfect for the role, because he's got that creepy smile and those creepy eyes.
Gross.
And yet for some reason people on the internet think he's adorable.
He's not. I'm sorry. He's not. He's not good looking. He has weird facial features, and it throws me off. I can't look at him. Like, even I can look at him more as Pennywise than I can as Bill, and that's weird.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, the story takes place in the town of Derry, Maine, where actually a lot of Stephen King's novels kind of tie into Derry, Maine, because it's just one of, like, the biggest pools of evil that King has created in his universe for some reason.
In Maine. Why not? Lobster
Besides
country,
Nebraska, yep. But in the movie and the story, period, a group of kids, 6 boys and 1 girl, you've got Eddie, Richie, Bill, Stan, Mike, Ben, and then Bev. Kind of a coming-of-age story. The movie describes deeply personal fears that children experience and how they grow out of it, and the uniqueness of fear itself, and this unworldly being, It, who King has created. It's not known to be a demon or it's just a supernatural creature, and it has been dormant for years and years and years until the creation of man, and then he comes alive and he eats children, mostly because children are more fearful than adults. They've got more unrealistic fears like giant spiders, werewolves, things that go bump in the night, whereas adults are afraid of paying your taxes. But he disguises himself as this clown, and he comes out of hibernation roughly every 27 years to feast on kids, and it just happened to be underground in Derry, Maine, where he comes out of this creepy well every 27 years and wreaks havoc on the town, and a bunch of kids go missing, but for some reason, no one in the town ever suspects it or ever puts it together besides this nerdy little kid, Ben, who is new to town and decides to look into the history of Derry, which is, I mean, odd in itself.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
Like, how come no one in the whole town could figure it out? This kid who's been there for 5 minutes was like, wait a minute.
Yes. Why are there all these children dying?
Why?
Currently, right now, the remake of it is sitting at an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is amazing.
The gold standard of
Yeah.
movie reviews, the Rotten Tomatoes review.
So differences about just Pennywise himself being this unruly creature. In the new one, they had more advanced technology, so they were able to make him, I mean, the creepy mouth with all the teeth. Obviously, they couldn't have done that in 1990. They just didn't have the CGI for it.
It would have looked ridiculous.
Exactly.
So bad.
Exactly. And that's another one of those great things is that this one, Pennywise is kind of this almost ancient-looking type of clown,
Yeah.
which is so much more frightening to me, I think,
I thought it was scary.
than Tim Curry's Pennywise. Because, I mean, if you think about it, our parents were kids when the first one came out.
Yeah.
And, well, not really kids, but, and they're like, they
Young
were our
adults.
age. Yeah. And to them, Pennywise then was frightful because nobody was scared of clowns really yet. I mean, they
Not
were just
that I know of.
these happy-go-lucky people in colorful makeup, and I mean, that was scary to think that this average normal clown could be frightening and could do evil things. And for us,
Today it just takes a lot to scare people.
exactly.
You
And
have
so
to overdo it and have it be
Yep.
overly scary for people to actually like
exactly.
credit it as being a scary movie.
Yeah, and to do that, they almost take him back a couple centuries, like even clothing-wise. And that's what makes it more frightening, is because it's this being that we don't know when it came about. It's dressed in this old clothing. Like,
He just
how
shows up.
old and evil is this thing?
He does a weird dance in front of some
Yeah.
fire, and that's
Yeah.
it.
But, I mean, besides the outwards appearance, Bill Skarsgård was a lot creepier, and he was almost... And you see it in, like, the very end scene where he takes Bev into the sewer, and you see all the floating children. He's just naive. He's this naive creature that is smart enough to know how to capture its own food,
Yeah.
but not smart enough to really, I mean, understand how to manipulate people.
Yeah.
He just knows how to scare them.
Yeah, he just wants them to be afraid, and he thinks that's gonna get the whole thing, but that's not how that works.
Exactly. And as Tim Curry had it, he was just this fun, playful clown, and I mean, he was more human-like, and
Yeah, and I think that obviously being more human-like makes it a little less scary.
yeah,
Because, like,
you see people manipulating people all the
Yeah.
time, and
that's every day of my whole life.
exactly.
Well, you don't see demon-looking clown guys running around stealing kids and manipulating them all the time.
Exactly. Some weird things that have really happened since it came out, or started to come
These
out.
are so weird.
It's been putting clowns out of work, and a lot of clowns have been protesting it.
I mean, clown is just a bad job to have in general.
Exactly. Everyone's gonna have a fear, sometimes irrational, and for some people that's clowns. But I mean, even last year we saw people standing in clown outfits in the middle of the night on the highways and
that was
standing
the
in
worst.
parks.
That was the worst.
It was terrible. They would just show up, and it almost created an excuse for actual criminals to dress up as clowns, and there were kidnappings and burglaries and stuff like that happening too.
Awful. There was also at the Alamo, there
Oh,
was
yeah.
a clown-only screening.
Of it,
Of
and we
it.
mean the Alamo Drafthouse
Yes.
Theater.
Not the actual Alamo, Texas.
But the Alamo is known for doing a lot of crazy, kooky things. But in oh my God, when was it? Whenever Wonder Woman came out,
Yeah.
they had a women's only showing of Wonder Woman, and on their website, they were getting a lot of flashback from men. Well, why aren't you doing a men's only showing of Superman or things like that? And then somebody decided to be a jokester, and they're like, why don't you do a clowns only screening of It? And the Alamo was like, you know what? That's not.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And so they did. I think they did a couple showings where you had to dress up as a clown to show up to the theater. And some people didn't realize that when they bought the tickets for that showing. And they showed up and they were just the only people sitting in a theater full of clowns.
That's
And can you imagine how terrifying that would
so
be?
uncomfortable. And I'd be like, well, we have to go right now.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen on campus lately, people have just been like tying red balloons to everything.
Really?
Yeah,
I haven't noticed that.
I've seen a couple Snapchat stories of like red balloons on sewer grates or like in the elevators. They're just like
No,
all
thank you.
around campus. I think it's hilarious.
Oh, AMC was tying red balloons to sewer grates that were outside of the theaters.
It was scary when I saw the movie. Now I think it's funny.
Yeah. Yesterday, it was kind of all over the news, but the Burger King in Russia actually filed a petition with the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service to ban the clown-centric horror flick, It, within Russia because they think that it's advertising McDonald's and that it's free advertisement for McDonald's.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, and
Classic Russia.
Yep, and they're claiming that Pennywise looks identical to Ronald McDonald in every sense.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
I don't know what their Ronald McDonald looks like, but that is not what he looks like here.
No, but it's crazy. But of course, when these types of things happen, there's always just the weirdest phenomenon.
People are weird, so
Yeah, they
whatever.
The 2017 It happens to be the highest grossing horror film of all time besides The Exorcist. And yeah, which is nuts.
That is nuts.
And of course, it's one of the highest grossing rated R films of all time too,
Yeah,
which is
that's crazy.
on opening night it beat out Deadpool
Oh yeah.
in sales, which was amazing. Nobody expected it to get that big. It was a budget of $35 million, and I know that they've already gone over like 400
Oh yeah.
400 million.
For sure they already have. And they do already have part 2 in the works, and a release date is set September 6th, 2019, which is exciting.
I know. It's exactly around the time that this one came out, but now we're doing it 2 years later, which is going to be great.
That's going to be fun.
A lot of things, and this is going to get a little raunchy. Some things that they didn't put in the first half of the movie, which was in the first half, or in the book. I guess the book isn't split into halves. One thing that they couldn't do in the first half is split or like switch in between, because the book goes from past to present, as you're seeing these kids grow up, and there's a lot of flashbacks to when they were kids and this is all happening. But in the end, when Pennywise drags Bev down into the sewers, that scene is actually replacing the scene in the book where the kids have this orgy, which was the purpose of King having that in there, was that all these kids were innocent and they knew that they had to somehow bond together in this innocence and then have something to grow together with. And so they each take turns with Bev, and although it's horrifying, it makes sense in a really messed up way.
My brain does not work like that.
Yeah, and of course that's a classic King move, is to put something that just would not make sense on any normal given day.
No, just make everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Love it. My favorite part of all movies and all shows ever is the coloring of it, because it from just the opening scene, when you see what the color, not the color scheme, but like the tint of the movie is, you can tell like what it's going to be.
It's just
like how it's going to be played. Yeah.
Hairy.
And it's got that kind of eerie, like a little bit darker tinge feeling, but the colors are still really vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it I think it makes it less scary. Like if it, sometimes when you do the whole dark kind of creepy, quote-unquote creepy vibe, it kind of misses because you're being overtly creepy with it. You're trying to make it scarier when the movie should just stand alone on its own, and it doesn't need to be like pitch black basically to be that scary. So to have it have that kind of darker tinge but still have like that bright red color, like everything that they're wearing kind of still vibrant and not so much like neutral or dark or scary is really cool. I thought it was a genius choice on behalf of whoever did the coloring for that movie. I have no idea who it is, but I thought it looked great.
It did. And the fact that the whole thing takes place in the 80s, I love. Of course, there's a resurgence of 80s thanks to Stranger Things and all that stuff going on, but it's fun. It's fun to see the clothing and, of course, the colors on the clothing, like Cassie said. It's just like this whole other world that, because we're in our 20s, we didn't get to experience that growing up, but now we get to relive what our parents had.
Oh, yeah.
And it's awesome.
Should we talk about the Ozarks now?
Yes.
Okay, so I've only seen one episode, but it was so good that I have to talk about it now. So, The Ozarks is a Netflix original series, and it premiered this year, and it stars Laura Linney and Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman plays something I've never seen Jason Bateman play before, I don't think. Don't usually see him in these kinds of roles. He's more like a funny guy, and I feel like people don't take him seriously very often. But he plays a, spoiler alert, by the way, he plays a father who works for he's a financial advisor.
Yeah, he's a private financial advisor.
Yes, he's a financial advisor, and his side job is he works for the Mexican drug cartel.
Money. That which separates the haves from the have-nots. Patience, frugality, sacrifice. Deciding to invest in your family's future. And taking responsibility for the consequences of those actions.
So, he's got a lot going on. His wife, Laura Linney, from the first episode, it looked like she didn't really know at first. And then he told her and was like, hey.
Well, Cassie, if you don't mind spoiler alerts. She knows from the very beginning.
Of course she knew. She's his wife. Of course she knew.
Yeah. And you kind of see that later on in the show is because you think that she's naive and she does all these horrible things to him. And you think it's because she doesn't know. He's doing these crazy things late at night.
So she's just terrible.
She's just terrible. She actually kind of coaxes him into doing it. She's like, oh, well, it couldn't be that bad. And then, when we're done with it, we'll be done. But that's the thing about
Mexican drug cartels, usually when you're done, you're dead. That's how that works.
There's no exiting once you're done. And of course, this is that normal, not to be racist, white family who has no idea what's going on. They think they're about to step into some money.
They're so dumb.
And it's just not the case.
No, it's not the case. They are moving to the Lake of the Ozarks in a attempt to save his life.
Oh, as well as his kids.
As well as his kids and his wife's life.
Yeah, because the leader who he deals with, well, Jason Bateman tells him, oh, my wife doesn't know anything. But of course, the cartel's like, we don't believe you at all. So we're going to kill her too just in case. And your kids. And, the first episode kicks off, right away. You think he's just this financial advisor who's got
guy.
Yeah, he's got some family problems. And then you just jump, not even jump, you just tumble headfirst into this huge mess.
Yes. The head guy shows up, and he's got a gun, and kills someone right away.
And his friend is working behind his back, as well as the two other guys who are helping them in the process. And he's been keeping money back for himself, and I think they're $8 million.
$8 million they took from him. So obviously he's feeling a little crossed. So Jason Bateman is like, I can get you the money in the Lake of the Ozarks, which his friend had told him about. he has no idea how it actually
Totally
works at
pulls
all.
it out of nowhere. He's going to save his family. He's going to make back all that money plus more because there's tons of unmonitored cash flow coming in from the Ozarks.
Tourists and people just like all over in the summer in the Ozarks.
And of course, this is right at the end of summer that he's moving. I mean, the kids have already started back in school, and he's moving them out there right at the end of summer. I mean, there's no cash coming in to these places right now. Everybody's coming back.
I've never been to the Lake of the Ozarks. I have a personal vendetta against the Lake of the Ozarks purely because when I moved here, I'd only heard of it once, and it was in a Laura Ingalls Wilder book. She's just...
Spoken like a true Minnesotan.
Yeah, she's just a little prairie girl, and she had a home on the Ozarks, and that's the only reason I knew at all what the Ozarks were, even a little. And then I came here, and everyone talks about the Ozarks all the time, and I'm like, well, I've never been. I've only heard what Laura Ingalls Wilder had to say about the Ozarks.
Yeah, people from Nebraska love going to vacation in the Ozarks.
I don't have that problem. I can
You
just
know what?
vacation at home.
I've got family in Missouri, and we've never been to the Ozarks. It's just not a big thing.
No. I don't understand why all of a sudden I came here and everyone was like, the Ozarks? I was like, no, I'm going to the lake at home.
That's the closest they get for spring break.
Just to the Ozarks.
They don't have the money to go all the way down to Florida and
No, you gotta go to
Miami
the Ozarks, I guess. The coloring on that show too. That one has that like drab, gray, blue, like coloring tint to it. And like I get it. I get the coloring. I actually appreciated it. I liked it a lot. I thought it, obviously, because at first when you think he's just this normal guy, you're like, the coloring is so boring.
Yeah,
because
the whole thing is
he's
dull.
so boring and he's so dull. Because I thought he was just this lame guy, but as it gets going and like the coloring never changes, it's got all this like people dying and like all this action happening, and he's still like this dull, drab, gray color.
Yeah.
Like,
And it actually gets kind of raunchy. I mean, his character takes on these really messed up characteristics, and it's just because he's living in his own little bubble while he's got all this weight on his shoulders. And, I mean, his wife is having an affair, and he is a private investigator following his wife. He finds out his wife's having an affair. The private investigator gets a tape of his wife having sex with this man, and constantly through the show, I mean, all the way up until maybe like third to last episode, the wife has no idea, but he's watched this video like 30 times.
Yeah, you see it a lot, like a lot of times.
Yeah, and it really messes with their marriage. Obviously, she was cheating on him.
Yeah, as that tends to do.
I mean, he buys a strip club at a point in the movie.
Can't wait for that.
He keeps investing, quote unquote. He actually like takes over these businesses so that he can launder the money in through them.
Yeah.
But ends up like basically owning them.
Well, this is
at the end of the season.
Wild fast.
Yep, and it's so easy to binge. I think we watched it in like 2 days.
Oh, wow. I gotta get on it then.
But
that's what happens when
next
you
season
start
will be
shows
good.
at midnight.
Yeah.
You only get to one episode. Well, we'll talk about our honorable mentions now. You've seen 2 of these movies?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen Mother and Kingsman: The Secret Circle. And I've seen The Bad Batch. Kingsman: The Secret Circle, it's good. Not as good as the first one, but it has its own thing. And of course there's Channing Tatum in it, so
how can you go wrong? You can't.
He plays this bad boy nicknamed Tequila, and he just gives you that little bit of country that you need in your life, whether you like the country or anything about country, period.
Well, my favorite part about that whole movie is that it's just based around an alcohol.
Yeah.
Like, they made the movie based around this alcohol because they paid for it.
Statesman whiskey.
Incredible.
But yeah, it's good. It's just as much action, tons of explosions. The music, like always, is great. You've got your slow-mo bullets and fight scenes. Mm-hmm. Definitely worth a watch. Mother is phenomenal. It really takes you for a turn. If you're not expecting the metaphor at the very end, you're not going to see it. I mean, unless you're incredibly smart. It's just really it's played really well. That's got Jennifer Lawrence in it. And she just plays this beautiful, naive wife who has no idea what's going on. And it turns out that her husband is basically God. And the whole thing is this huge metaphor for religion and almost how it's tainted. And it portrays God as this kind of selfish creature who just, he needs to create and he needs to be loved. And he can get angry when people do things wrong. But in the end, he has to forgive them. And he lets them take everything from him and from her because he's God. And that's, I mean, he keeps telling her, like, I have to. I have to.
I feel like if I see that movie, it's just going to go right over my head.
It's good. There's so much action in it. And the colors in that one, you would like the colors in that one.
And I'll have to see it.
Because it's beautiful. You literally see her bring life into this world. I mean, he basically creates her. So that she can bring life into this world of his, and then he lets other people destroy it all, and in the end, he takes everything from her and then starts over again. And at the very end of the movie, you see a whole different woman, because he just keeps creating over and over again, and he has to try differently each time, and so basically the woman is different each time.
Weird. Okay.
It's crazy.
I'm most excited for Stronger, which just came out on the 22nd. Stronger is Jake Gyllenhaal's new movie, which I'm hearing people... It got like a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. People are loving it. People are saying Oscar. I would personally love Jake Gyllenhaal to win an Oscar.
Which is crazy that Oscar season's like literally right around the corner again.
So close. But Stronger is about Jeff Bauman, who lost both of his legs in the Boston bombing. And this is like obviously based on a true story. It's about a real person and about a real event that happened. And I'm just excited to see Jake Gyllenhaal play this man who just lost his legs, and like try and recover from that. I'm excited to see how he does it. That'll be good.
Of course, you've got Gerald's Game on Netflix. With all the rise in Stephen King's book to screen adaptations, you've got Gerald's Game, which is a Netflix original movie basically about a woman or a man and a woman. They're a married couple, and they go on vacation. And their marriage has kind of lost its thing. And so they do weird, kinky things to keep it alive. Well, he has a heart attack while she's handcuffed to the bed. And he dies on top of her. And the entire movie is her being stuck in this cabin where they're staying on vacation. And she's stuck, and she's there for days. And it's basically the story of what happens while she's handcuffed to the bed.
Jeez.
Of course, it's wild, like all Stephen King's things are.
Yeah. Then on Netflix, Gaga's new documentary, which I'm so excited is finally out, because she's been going through a lot recently. Yeah. Like her new
fibromyalgia.
Yeah, she has fibromyalgia. She just canceled her marriage, her wedding. Like,
oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't even know she was getting married.
Yeah, she was engaged. They broke up to Taylor Kinney, who's from Nebraska.
Oh, man, that would have been the dream.
Yeah,
Gaga married to someone in Nebraska.
People wanted them to get married at the CenturyLink Center and just have everyone come. And I was like, somehow I just don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, Nebraska.
Yeah, but
silly corn eaters.
Yeah, really. Her new documentary is supposed to be really good and supposed to be very honest. So I'm excited to watch that on Netflix.
And that just came out on this past Friday.
Yeah.
4 days before that, she canceled 16 European tour dates, and she's heartbroken about it.
Yeah, obviously it's not something that she wants to do, but her body just can't right now.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of that. But, of course, her documentary is definitely one worth watching, especially if you're a Gaga fan. And then on Netflix, The Bad Batch, which was in theaters over the summer. Kind of one of those indie films, almost like a Mad Max post-apocalyptic themed movie. This girl gets put out into, or how would you explain this? Almost like a Mad Max meets Escape from LA or Escape from New York. If you misbehave, you get tossed into the wasteland, and there, I mean, you're free game. And this girl gets caught up with these cannibals, and she loses an arm and a leg, and miraculously frees herself, gets out of there, and she finds this weird utopia where you take drugs and you just live this normal, weird lifestyle. And she gets mixed up with this guy's kid, and it's just a strange story of...
Just a weird story.
It's just weird. I mean, it's worth a watch, but it definitely makes no sense in the end.
Love it. Love it when it makes no sense at all.
But it's vibrant and it's fun, and it's just one of those fill the time type of movies.
So, the Netflix lineup for next month isn't, like, absolutely incredible, but it's not by any means bad. So we've got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory coming on October 1st, and also Tommy Boy on October 1st.
Some classics.
2 classic films. The Cult of Chucky is coming on October 3rd.
And I think that's the newest Chucky movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the newest movie. Donnie Darko is going to be back on Netflix on October 11th. And I'm very excited because I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I've said it before, and I will probably talk about it a lot. But I love Jake Gyllenhaal. October 13th, one of my favorite movies of all time, Talladega Nights, The Legend of Ricky Bobby. And then, of course, one of my favorite TV shows over the last 2 years, or like last year and a half-ish.
Yeah, I think it's
year and a half.
It's been, year and a half.
Yeah. Stranger Things Season 2.
Gonna be amazing.
It's gonna be so
October
good.
27th.
Can't wait.
Right before Halloween.
Yes.
Enough time to binge it.
Yes.
Our creepy 80s
Your
fix.
Halloween will be very exciting with Stranger Things.
Movie highlights for October are gonna be fantastic, and of course you're gonna hear from us. Mostly at the end of October, we're gonna have some fun things for you. But until then, definitely check out Blade Runner 2049 on October 6th. Right before my birthday. We've definitely already got tickets. It's got Harrison Ford, of course. He was from the original, and now his story's continuing with Ryan Gosling. Yes, hey girl.
Love him so much.
Oh, and
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto. Of course, he's gonna play our token bad guy. We'll have to see where that goes.
Hopefully he's actually in this movie.
Yeah, but it's gonna be great. The Florida Project comes out October 5th. One of those indie movies. I believe it's an A24 film. It's kind of plays on this guy who owns a hotel, and this prostitute is living in there with her kids, and he basically has to raise her kids for her while he's kind of helping her out and basically raising her too. But that one's definitely one to look for. And then Professor Martson and the Wonder Women. That's the origin story of Wonder Woman, the comics. A professor and his wife who fall in love with the same girl, and how that girl kind of inspires him to write the comics, Wonder Woman, and basically how at that time comics weren't a legit form of, well, they just weren't legit.
Yeah.
And he wanted them published, and publishers weren't going to take it because that wasn't what sold. Books and academic journals were where it was. And then, of course, if you want your cheesy, awful horror movie fix, Saw has probably its last movie ever. Yeah,
sure.
Right.
I don't believe that for a second.
But on October 27th, you've got Jigsaw, the return of Jigsaw. So we'll see how that goes. I'll probably watch it just because I watched all the others, and they're so horrible. And this looks just as bad.
One Saw movie ever, and it had the guy from Princess Bride in it. Oh, who else was in it? Someone, I think, I can't remember. It was someone. Oh, Luke Danes from Gilmore Girls.
Oh, yeah.
I was so confused. I was like, why is Luke Danes and the guy from Princess Bride in this movie?
This one I thought had...
I don't even remember. It was like...
I thought that this one had...
Maybe this...
like, known people, but I don't think it does.
Some of them just, like, don't have anybody.
Yeah.
No one. There's no one in
There's
this
no
movie.
one. Even though in the trailer it definitely looks like there's a lot of known names, but there's
well,
not.
Apparently you're not gonna know anybody in the whole Jigsaw movie, so have fun with that one.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting. Of course, it's one of those cringe-worthy movies.
Yes.
So
we'll see if I actually end up seeing it. We had fun talking about movies today. We're gonna have more fun talking about movies next time, and the time after that. So come back, listen to my podcast, listen to Anna. We're going to talk at you for a while.
We love movies, Netflix original shows, anything Netflix. Of course, streaming is amazing.
If you want to tell me about any nice coloring, you could just search Cassie Sue Golden on all social media, and I will talk about it forever.
Yeah.
This is Cassie.
And this is Anna. And this is...
And that was
Now Showing.